Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series, where we're talking to entrepreneurs and CEOs all about their epic business failures. I had a massive one this morning, but with us on the line today is the co-founder and the founder rather and CEO of a company called Xena Intelligence, and his name is none other than Akhil Nair. Welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's a real kind of you to invite me over here.
Yeah, man. Awesome stuff. Well, look, let's get into it. So let's start with the elevator pitch. What are you guys up to there at Xena?
Sure. Yeah. Just before that point, so I've been following you for a while now. I think what you're doing is pretty amazing. Platforming a lot of these startups who otherwise wouldn't have had it, and the specific format of a podcast. I think I mentioned it to you. It's pretty cool. It's very, very unique, and what you're doing and the impact that you've had is pretty amazing from what I've seen. So thanks again for that. And so I'm the founder and CEO of Xena Intelligence. So a concept is pretty simple. We work with e-commerce brands. Currently just focused on those brands who sell on Amazon. So one of the biggest pain points for any brand that sells on Amazon is the high fees, high costs, and the increasing competition and complexity in selling those marketplace platforms. Amazon, obviously, biggest e-commerce platform by far in the US and mostly in the world as well. And so a lot of these brands are stuck in the pain point that they either have to participate in Amazon to grow, or not participate and miss out on a huge, massive opportunity that their competitors are. So eventually they end up working with agencies or trying to figure out the whole platform themselves. And so that's where we came up with Xena, where Xena does most of the work, specifically in ad optimizations for you. Being Amazon approved developers, our software is able to immediately take over your Amazon seller account and immediately automate all the campaigns and processes that take place. In real time, our software is able to optimize these ad campaigns every single hour of the day. And since the software doesn't take a leave or doesn't need rest, it is able to be much more efficient as opposed to if one were to do it manually. And since we collect massive amounts of data, we are also able to use this flow of data to make the algorithms even more effective as we collect more information with time. We have been at it for around a year and a half. We currently work with more than 55 brands. Most of them are early stage funded startups. A couple of them have come on Shark Tank. Some of them have gone through Y Combinator, Techstars, and so on. We also work with a couple of Fortune 100 companies as well. And so this issue of growing on e-commerce platforms is kind of what we are tackling and helping out.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Cool. So let's get into the meat and the potatoes. What is your epic story of fail for our audience around the world today?
Which one should I start with?
Pick one.
One of the primary ones I think was pretty interesting. So just for cultural context, I moved to the US around 5 years ago, and I'm from India, specifically the southern part of India. And typically people from the south part of India are culturally conservative. They are typically not risk takers. They are big proponents of leading a safe, predictable life, which includes being part of a salaried organization and so on. So culturally speaking, being a business owner or even starting a startup has never been on the table till very, very recently. And that's the kind of the context that I came. And so when I came to the US, when I got an opportunity to pursue my studies here, I saw the stark differences in the environment that the US has as opposed to India, where I was from. I realized that US has great opportunities for those who work hard. They do not, unlike other countries, if you work hard and you have a great idea, you typically are given an opportunity to grow. So I decided to step my toes in to the world of entrepreneurship and see what happens. I was a big, like you, I was also part of a couple of media organizations, pretty large ones, especially digital ones. So I was passionate about growing digital brands. And so I started working with a couple of small businesses to help them kind of grow in the e-commerce space. My initial idea, if I think about it, was so stupid. My Xena was actually intended to be automated consulting software. My idea was to replace McKinsey, EY, Deloitte, all these organizations, and my software can kind of come into place and do the work for them. In theory, sure, it sounds great. Scratch that. In theory, it sounds stupid. I don't know what I was thinking. It was ridiculous. And that is what I constantly heard. Like, hey, are you going beyond small businesses? It is impossible to get small businesses at scale. Are you going beyond large organizations? You need an insider to kind of get into that. So this is what I constantly heard. And, all these movies and pop culture references about startups and entrepreneurships, they kind of encourage you to kind of push yourself, work harder, and kind of get to that place. So that was my first failure, to truly believe that I had a great idea that can change the world, truly believe that just because I have an idea, I'm probably good at speaking with people, I was able to succeed. That was so stupid of me. And I wasted a lot of time doing that. But fortunately, it's because of that experience that I was able to stumble upon this specific niche that is brand selling on Amazon, where that idea kind of came to me while wallowing in my own anxiety and misery when the initial plan did not work out. So I think that was my first failure that I faced. In hindsight, was pretty helpful.
Oh, that's funny, dude. Well, look, I mean, that's the whole point, right? It's to go, well, that wasn't a great idea, but what if we did that? I think that's the whole point. And then just, persevering. I mean, the amount of ARR you guys are generating in 18 months is kudos to that exact principle, isn't it? So, that's all credit to you. So let's look at what you learned from that whole experience. I mean, what lesson do you now take forward with you into your business?
One of the biggest lessons I believe, and this is not just from my story, but looking at my colleagues, other startup entrepreneurs, is that those who have been able to adapt quickly and not hold on to something that they passionately believe in has worked out mostly for them. And that, I think, has given me an idea. So for example, I run this business, it grows and grows. Maybe it reaches a point where I can grow no longer. And then somebody comes and tells me, hey, why don't you explore this aspect of e-commerce? I should be mentally, even though I achieved so much, I should be mentally able to accept that and move towards the direction if the need arises. And that hesitation or the need to overcome your own letting go of your baby and kind of holding on to a better baby, if that helps you, is something that is very important. And from the other entrepreneurs that I've seen, just to give an example, I was part of Techstars New York, which concluded a few months back. You would imagine startups who get into Techstars, they're doing pretty well, they have a good traction, obviously a great idea, great team, and so on. But there have been a couple instances where during the course of the accelerator program, the whole business model changed. They were one company, but then at the end of the program, they were completely different. And this was insane because Techstars is a VC. They invest in you before you come to the program. But I was surprised to see that in my specific case in Techstars, the founders or the managing director was actually supportive of that idea. And he told it very clearly, just because we invested in you, just because you've reached so much, do not hesitate to change in any way you can if you feel it is appropriate after you get sage advice. And that, I think, was pretty eye-opening for me, because I imagined once you go in, you go all in. But in reality, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. Tell me, Akhil, if you could get into the Matt Brown Show time machine and kind of go back in time and give yourself, a piece of advice, or maybe do one thing differently, like what would you do differently and why?
Oh, I would do one thing. Maybe start up professionally. I might do the same thing. I don't care. I mean, I've ended up reasonably well. What I would tell my past self is to relax. Just don't lose your mind and hair, and don't cut your life expectancy by 20 years just by being stressed all the time. It's just that if I could go back and tell me to relax, I would. And I think the outcome would have been same, if not better, from what I have right now. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have. I did not regret what I did. I did not regret wasting time. I just wish I was not so worried, and by default, make the people around me as worried as well.
Well, so was it your first startup? when you were going to
Yes.
automate consulting. Yeah, well, that's how it goes, man. I mean, I think like if I think about my first company was a record label, which I sold. So when I was 26 years old, I thought I could walk on water, you know. But luckily the universe was going to fix all of that for me, because the next three startups all failed. You know, I got into like personal development, then I got into like the super yacht industry, wrote a book about that. You know, like it was just, and I had to go through this, like, so basically just a story. So when a business dies, my mentor told me this. He said, when a business dies, it's just the business. It's not you. Like, you know what I mean? Like your self-worth is not attached to when a business dies, or it shouldn't be, because if it is, that's a problem. So now as I went and businesses failed, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's all right then. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool. I just start another one the next day. The problem happens when your business gets to scale and then it fails. That's a whole other bag of issues.
What would you, I don't think anyone has asked you this, Matt, like what would you say to your 20-year-old self if you were able to go back?
Just don't quit on yourself, man.
That's
You know,
it.
because I took
That's
that
it.
first one pretty hard, you know, because the first one is always the hardest, because it's like, oh, I failed, and you walk around like a loser, you know, a complete victim. But it's just like, and then you're like, well, actually, this is just part of it. You know, you have to have at least, you're going to fail, dude. Like, you're going to have businesses that dies. Like, every successful entrepreneur has had a business that has died at some point. It's a necessary experience. You have to go through it. Otherwise, you're not you're just lucky. You know what I mean? And there are some people do get lucky. Like, you get one-hit wonders, you know, where they build a business, they sell it, and then that's it for them, you know. And I know guys like that too. And there's one guy I know, the stars aligned. He built this insurance business and he sold it for billions.
Whoa.
And then he went into depression.
Why is
And
that?
when I asked him why, he said, because I realized after I sold the business, I realized I was a one-hit wonder. I
Oh,
didn't have it in me to do it again. Think about
yeah.
that. You have all the
Mhm.
money in the world, right? And you're miserable as sin because you now know what you're about. So you get like founders who found companies. I'm a founder. So I've done 14 startups over 25 years. And then you get others that just hold on to these businesses for 20 years in the same period. You know what I mean? And then hopefully they have a liquidity event, or maybe they never sell it.
Mhm.
You know, so I think the thing that you have to really know what you're about to answer your question. And so I would say to myself, don't give up on yourself. You know, you're just part of figuring out what you're about, you know?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is pretty crippling if you once you reach there.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, what's your advice, Bud, to other CEOs or founders right now in terms of the importance of failing and becoming successful?
I think almost the same lines of what you said, do not give up. And do not give up has different connotations. It is not to keep repeating or keep doing the same things that you have always done. It is not to blindly follow your own passion and not regarding any other inputs or advice that you receive. And identifying the difference between delusion and passion, I think, is something very, very fine line. In fact, extremely blurred and changes drastically from person to person. But knowing that, I think probably is one of the biggest superpowers an entrepreneur can ever have.
Mm-hmm. Akhil, tell me about books that you've read, tools or other resources that you recommend.
Quite a bit. So Techstars has a couple of books. I think 0 to 1, something by Peter Thiel was really, really inspirational. Basically, the concept is that it takes much more effort to get from 0 to 1 as opposed to 1 to, and so on and so forth. So I think that was very impactful for me in terms of the perspective that you have, because as an entrepreneur, you always imagine yourself to be the victim of hardships, blood, sweat, and tears, fighting against the world, going outside your comfort zone. You never imagine that what you're doing is a minuscule, tiny portion of the rest of your life. I think that that thought and all the books that represent the thought was been pretty impactful for me.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Have you read Crossing the Chasm?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Steph,
Almost
that's
similar
a
concept.
startup Bible. All right, awesome. Well, look, Akhil, that does conclude your time in the hot seat. Congrats on all your perseverance, man, and the success that you now have, now that you pivoted. But exciting, man, and congrats on your raise. You know, you're doing a lot of things right, and I think you're going to be hugely successful. So, wishing you and the team all the best. Okay.
Thanks, Matt. You've, like I said, what you're doing is pretty impactful and very selfless. And I hope you continue to impact the lives of many more entrepreneurs and, of course, thousands of your viewers.
Thank you. Akhil, you're a legend. Everybody else, we'll see you again soon. Ciao.